Welcome to Electrify, the internet's most popular podcast on the National Electrical Code, with your host Paul Abernathy. So sit back, relax, and let's learn some code. Yeah, baby.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Electrify. My name is Paul Abernathy, your host, and thanks for joining me on this podcast. And hopefully you've listened to this podcast, but you've listened to other podcasts that we have. And we have Let's Ask Paul podcast. We have the Electrify podcast, which you're listening to today, which is the actual official podcast of Electrical Code Academy Incorporated. But we also have Master the NEC, which is a long-running podcast series that you can search on all of your favorite listening platforms and listen to all of our shows. There's over 600 plus shows that you can listen to on all different types of topics. So I encourage you to go back through the library and listen to all those shows. Again, available on all your popular listening platforms. Well, welcome to the show today. We're going to do a little bit of a overview of Article 100. I know it's definitions, but of Article 100 in the 2023. And we're going to talk more or less, not just go over the changes, because I really don't want to go deep into the changes. What I want to do is kind of explain what has changed and some of the reasons why things have changed and the whole change process when it comes to what gets into Article 100. And how all that has changed for the 2023. So I'm not going to sit here and just read you all these definitions and things like that, because obviously this is a podcast and I want you to be able to, listen, relax, right? And just kind of hear an overview of what has changed. Because again, this is probably a little bit early for many of you. The 2023 just dropped on September 1st. And unless you have the link application from NFPA, which I highly encourage you to get, it is an amazing software that works on every device. It's in the cloud. You can log in, and no matter where you are, you have access to the code book. But what's neat about it is you have access to all of the NFPA documents with this link system. And again, $9.99 a month, or do what I did. I just get the annual membership. That's right. I paid for mine. I don't get any gifts from NFPA, okay? So this is, I wholeheartedly support Link and what NFPA is doing. So I encourage you to get it. Now, if you're preparing for an electrical exam, again, you're going to need your code book. You can pre-order those. I will tell you now, do not buy your code books. Okay, I'm going to say this again. Do not buy your code books from Amazon or eBay, unless you're buying it directly from NFPA, or if you're buying it from a supply house that actually gets their books from NFPA or something like that. Verify your source. There are a lot of counterfeits out there. There are a lot of books that are, and I'm seeing this as an educator, when I'm working with students and we're working on the NEC, and there's pages missing out of their NEC. Now, this is not something, the NEC does contain errors. And then what'll happen is erratas will come out and they'll fix these errors, and that's okay. Because you should print those off and then you just tuck them in the back of your code book. Okay, not a problem. But there'll be whole pages missing. There'll be some numbers that are different. There'll be some numeral values that aren't the same as what would be in the original authentic code book. And that can screw you as an installer. That can screw you on an exam. So look, even though something might be $10, $15, even $20 cheaper, if it looks too good to be true and you go find the price that's at NFPA, again, remember what you're also supporting. You are supporting NFPA. No, NFPA does not write the code. They distribute it, but they do some great things as an association. and they are worthy of the support for everything that they do for this industry. So, and they have standards on so many applications. So that's why I recommend Link. Forget the PDFs of the past. We're beyond that now. This thing is a searchable product that is just simply flat out amazing. And I encourage it and I endorse it 100%. But when it comes to buying code books, again, do me a favor. Don't get drawn into the cheap prices on Amazon, cheap prices on eBay. Trust me. And anybody out there, I'm just saying, if you do buy one of those and you get a shammy book, make sure you go give a review. 1 star. Let the world know, because it can truly, I've had students that have really stressed over it. You know, not everybody can just at the drop of a hat drop $100 plus on a new code book. So look, you know, you got apprentices that are learning, you got journeymans that are learning it. This can get expensive. So at the end of the day, we love when you put money in and you invest in your future. But investing in something that is a copy that is counterfeit, that is missing pages or missing verbiage, that's never a good thing. So do me a favor. Support NFPA or anybody that officially carries official NFPA documents. Then you can support them. But don't trust Amazon and don't trust eBay. Unless, of course, it's an NFPA account and you can verify that. All right, enough of that. All right, so Article 100 has been radically changed for the 2023 edition of the National Electrical Code. So for you that are in the 2020, for example, you know that throughout the code, there was this reference to .2 sections, and that was actually in the scope of Article 100. It said definitions are also found in the .2 section of other articles. Now, .2 is referencing the section 2, section 3, section 4, that would be .2, .3, .4 of a specific article, like non-metallic sheath cable, Article 334, things like that. So the .2 had additional definitions, but they were germane only to that specific article. And any time that a definition was used more than once or 2 or more, then it had to be relocated to Article 100. Well, in the 2023, they said, you know what, that really need to get away from that. That is quite confusing, and I agree. So definitions being what they are, they're definitions. So let's move those definitions to Article 100, where they rightfully need to be. Now, does that make Article 100 much bigger? Absolutely it does. But at least it puts it all concisely in a location where when you need to look at something, you're like, I don't know what the crap that is, then you can go to Article 100 and it's all right there alphabetized. Okay? So that's just kind of the concept that we've got. Now, I'm going to talk about a bunch of different changes to the formatting to kind of give you a heads up, to kind of help that learning curve. So we're not going to get so much in the definitions. I'm going to have upcoming videos that do that, because I think some of those you have to visually see. So I encourage you, this is my moment of promotion. I hope that all of you listen to this podcast will go over to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/Master the NEC. And just do me a favor, subscribe, give me a thumbs up, help support us over there. It really does help the algorithm and gets our videos and things. And I also will tell you, and I'm probably the only one doing this, I also share all of my podcasts on YouTube as well. So if you go there just looking for videos, you're going to be surprised that you're going to see a lot of static screens listening to me talk. That's because it came to my attention probably more than a year and a half or 2 ago that there's a lot of people that on their phone, they have the YouTube app, that they find it much easier to listen to podcasts on YouTube. And nobody was doing it. Now, does that cause your numbers to go down? Does that cause your algorithm to get out of play and you don't get a lot of clicks and all? But I'm not about the clicks. That's why I moved my products off of YouTube as far as the pay-per-view stuff. I did that over a year plus ago. I'm all about giving you different ways to listen to the content. And so the YouTube app works great. You can put it on your phone. You can go right there and you can actually listen to everything from the YouTube app. So it's just another way to listen to the podcasts. But we put our videos over there as well. But again, Our podcasts are there. So you have so many ways to listen. That's just another way to listen. Okay. But do me a favor, go to youtube.com//master the NEC, all one word, and subscribe and share and let everybody know about it, because hopefully we're doing some good things here that you like. Okay. So Article 100 grew, got the big boy pants in 2023, and it expanded. Code Making Panel 1, they oversee Article 100. They have a lot more things that are being relocated to there. And so it grew. So one of the first things that we have to notice that in the National Electrical Code, you're going to see little symbols to the left, and that's going to be an N. Now, if you're in the link system, it's going to be N, and it's kind of highlighted in this kind of I guess it's like a tan color. You can click on that if you didn't know that. And it'll tell you that this is new for this article, or it'll say this is from a previous, and we'll show you the little icons. There'll be like a triangle, will be a change from a previous edition, things like that. But the new means that this is new material. Now, what's interesting is that when you click on the N, and I just want to get this out of the way first before we get started for those that are following on the link, it says this content was not in the previous edition. Well, we know that the scope was in the previous edition, right? That's a no-brainer. But what's new means that, okay, I'm not going to highlight any of the text because, yes, it came from a previous edition, but it's retooled. Its verbiage is missing. It's reworded in a way. Some things were taken out. So it is new to Article 100, but it's not, the concept is not totally new. And why is that important to tell you this right up front? Because I want you to understand how this works, how link works, and how it's going to help you. I can look at the N in the margin, and I can say, wow, this scope looks new. Now, I know the scope is not new because it was in Article 100 before, and scopes will give you the intent of the article. But what it does tell me is, since none of this is grayed out, none of this is highlighted, that it is new verbiage, something was deleted. It's not word for word copy into the definition. Okay? Now, when we do see that, I'm going to show you what they're doing to help you with that. And so we'll get to that in a second, because I do want to give you these tips to help you navigate this. And that's what this is about. This show, since it's a podcast, I don't want to go over all the definitions to kind of get you overwhelmed, because I want you to crack your code book open. I want you to get a link. I want you to get familiar with it. But I want to tell you how to maneuver it much easier. And then I will talk about a few significant changes in the way things get moved. Okay. So understand the intent of this podcast today. It's not a full code change podcast, because I think that has to be very visual. Right, so the scope is new because it removes something. Now, what did it remove? Well, it removed the reference to Part 3 in the previous edition, which had definitions for hazardous classified locations. Why? Because now all the definitions are in 100, so that was no need to have that verbiage. It also made reference to .2, the sections in other articles, but since now everything in the 2023 as far as definitions gets moved to 100, you don't need that reference either. So it simplifies it out. And also, the effort was to remove redundancy. In the 2020 edition, it talked about the scope was saying that also was about definitions that were in Article 100. Well, you don't need to say that because the scope is inside of Article 100. We know that this is all germane to 100. So that's really just tidying up things a little bit. But I do like the way the code panels are going with this. And I do like some of the changes that they are making in the definitions and how we list things. So I'm going to cover all those. But let me tell you real quick, because it is important, what the scope reads now. Here's what the scope says. So here's what Article 100 is all about. It says this article contains only those definitions essential to the application of this code. What code? The NEC, NFPA 70. It is not intended to include commonly defined general terms or commonly defined technical terms from related codes and standards. So it's not trying to use terms from other standards. The terms that are used here are essential for applications involved in this standard, NFPA 70. Now, with that said, it goes on to say an article number in parentheses following the definition indicates that the definition only applies to that article. So what we had in the past was .2, which told you that a definition applied to that specific article where it was located. And then anything that was in Article 100 applied to when you had two or more articles that uses the terminology, then that's why it was located in 100. So you had a kind of that structure. In the 2023, that's all gone, although it still subtly tells you that, right? It's saying, hey, here's Article 100. It's, definitions of terms that are essential for the application of this code. Common terminology can come from other documents, can come from the Webster Dictionary, things like that. But these definitions are germane to the application of this code only. And then it's telling you that in parentheses, it's going to say, oh, see this? This tells you that this definition only applies to that specific article. So it's just a new way of doing it and getting rid of the .2, which has caused people to be confused. So understanding this is going to really help you when you see those parentheses and you wonder, what does it mean? And things like that. So I'll explain all that, and I'll even explain the brackets as we get to it here in a second, so that you can kind of see how that works, because that didn't change. Where brackets were used in the code, that was to reference other standards. It means that it was extracted from that standard and dropped into the definition or dropped into the code somewhere. Okay, so that really doesn't change. All right, so also you have an informational note that was added in the 2023, and it's a good informational note because basically it's saying, oh, by the way, remember what I just said about brackets? It's saying, hey, a definition that is followed by a reference in brackets has been extracted from one of the following standards. And it lists all these standards down here. It says only editorial changes were made to the extracted text to make it consistent with this code. So it was anything that was editorially changed was simply done to keep the flow of the way this code is and the intent of why it's making that reference. So it might be a definition or it might be something in the code and the brackets there. And usually it's going to be extracted directly from the document, like NFPA 99, which is Healthcare Facilities Code. But it could have editorial changes in order to flow with the NEC NFPA 70 document. But the intent is still there, and it is extracted from another hierarchy document. You with me? So that's what the brackets are all about. You'll see when I talk about an example. So now that you understand what the scope is, you'll go through and you'll have significant changes to things like accessible when it comes to wiring methods. They added the term or blocked. Okay, so if you have a wiring method and it needs to be considered accessible or is to be considered accessible as it applies to wiring methods, they added it was capable of being removed or exposed without damage to the building, structure, or frame, or not permanently closed in or blocked by the structure. Okay, so just a little bit of a change in this. And again, I'm not going to go over all of the changes. But the very first change or new addition of a new definition that you're going to come to, and I'm going to use this as an example, is adapter. Now, the definition of adapter previously was in 520 for motion picture studios, whatnot, and they used the term adapter, and it was at the .2. Well, this is the first one, so kind of teaching you the new hierarchy here. That is the first one that was extracted from Article 520, and it's germane to 520 only. And so in the parentheses, it'll put 520. So kind of when you look at it now, you know, okay, adapter, I see the definition, and then you see at the end of it, it'll have a parenthesis, and that tells you that that is germane to 520. All right? Now, when you see the N in the margin, now remember, even though that's germane to 520, something could have changed. Something could have been modified in the text, okay, because it's new. But it's the key here is that those parentheses after that gives you the specific code article, that's kind of like the old .2 when that definition was found in .2 of that specific article. But now they're just doing it in a different way, and I like it. I do. I do like the way that it's being done here. And these are kind of the things that when we talk about NFPA, and we always say that the NFPA doesn't write the code, and they don't. But they are the arbiters of the publication, and they have been charged with it, and they are the ones that see that the manual of style, even though the code making people, we all know that we have this overarching document and we have to stick, we can't use different terminologies as subjective and maybe are just ambiguous and not enforceable. And we know this. When we're sitting there crafting the language, we know this. But the key is the manual of style, which is controlled by NFPA, and we know that it's something that we have to adhere to. And it tells us the processes for how we do the structure of the code. And so, again, the NFPA is charged with that, compiling the information, putting it together. Errors happen, and that's why erratas come out. And you should always go get your erratas and print them off. We just had one come out for an error in making references to certain subdivisions that weren't accurate, I guess, or just too inclusive. Anyway, you always want to go get those, print them out, and put them in your code book. Put them in the back of your code book, right? Just fold them in half, tuck them in there so the ends don't get all beat up, and tuck them right in the back, do that type of thing. Back in the day, what I used to do is take one of the manila envelopes that was just shy of the code's perimeter of the page, and I would take it and I would double tape it back in the back of my code book. So it's like a folder. And every time I would get an errata, I would fold it up and it would slide into that. And it kind of created a little folder in the back of my code book. And that's where I put them all in there. And you could shut it up and it would stay protected. And I would always remember that I could go to my erratas if I needed to. And I used to always write on the envelope. And this was kind of like the yellowish colored envelopes, so you could fold a normal piece of paper in half and it would fit in there. But yet it would sit perfectly on the last back cover of the code book. Now that the code book's bigger, and that's where I would keep them. And then I would write down on it so I could visually see what the errata was about and what specific articles or sections it was about. That way I knew what was in there. And that's just my way of doing it. You do whatever you want. But again, they can make a big difference if there's an errata out there that people aren't aware of. Okay. Anyway, so that's the first one you'll run into, adapter. You click on the end, for example. It will say that it was not in a previous edition. Well, of course it was, right? It was in, adapter was in 520, but there might be something changed in the verbiage a little bit, wordage, the verbiage that wasn't necessary, simplified the text. But I like the fact that it's making reference now to which article it's germane to. And so you'll go through here and you'll see that throughout the NEC. Now, the first one that we get to in Article 100 that's going to have the brackets, since we want to do that and we're using this as a lesson. The first one we get to is alternate power source, okay? And that is new. Now, it was in 517, so it's not new as in, wow, we've got just all of a sudden this new definition. Now, obviously, the definition has been altered a little bit, but, and again, like we said, if this definition comes out of another standard, then the only changes would be editorial to make it flow with what the document's intent of in this document from some other document, to make it kind of work right for the NFPA 70. Now, this one, alternate power source, originates from 99, section 3.3.4. And it's only germane to this one, alternate power source, is only germane to Article 517 for this definition. And it tells you that right there. So it has the brackets that tells you which other standard it came from, which is 99. And then it has the parentheses 517. So this definition is specific to healthcare facilities, right? It's very specific. And it tells you all of that now in Article 100. All right. And of course, you also will have your parentheses telling you what code panel oversees this definition. that type of thing. So the definition made in 100, but it was actually discussed and revamped and worded based on whatever code panel is after it in the parentheses. Okay. All right, so again, that is kind of the structure. Now, you're also going to notice that the very first one that you get to, and this is, again, if you're in Link or whatnot, the very first one that you're going to get to that has a little triangle, or we like to say a delta, that is in the left margin, is you got a little delta, and it talks about changed content. So what was a change from the previous edition? And so if you click on that little triangle, then you can see side by side what changed from the previous edition. Okay? So it means that it was here before, right? And it's like, okay, it was here, but there was a previous definition, maybe not in 100, but there was a previous definition, but here's the change to the definition, right? And you can see it right there. In this case, it was the addition of another informational note that was added. So again, that's what those little triangles are for. So the first triangle you'll see, or delta, in the left margin is going to be, the first one you'll run into is associated apparatus. And that's where you're going to have that little triangle or delta, however you want to say it. So you have that one there that you're going to run into. So that's the first one, and you're going to see those throughout the code. So you're going to see the ends for new. It might not be just new in like all brand new material. It might be extracted material, obviously from a .2 of another article, and it's maybe altered in some way. That means it's new, okay? And so again, just kind of play with it. So many different little subtle changes. I'll give you the first one that's identifiable example, which is a change to a definition that existed, but it's just a change for clarity, okay? First one we'll look at is, we'll just talk bathrooms. We know what a bathroom is, but we needed to know that definition, believe it or not, and the purists of the code know, why do we care about because we have so many references to what goes in a bathroom, and that qualifies things, whether it's the GFCI requirement, okay, all those. We have this spatial requirement for the tubs and the shower spaces, and we have all these rules, okay, the branch circuit requirements in 210.11. So we need to know what a bathroom is, right? Well, in the 2020 edition of the NEC, the definition of bathroom said an area including a sink, and then of course it had in parentheses basin, with one or more of the following: a toilet, urinal, a tub, a shower, a bidet, or similar plumbing fixtures, right? Well, what's a basin? Maybe is a synonym, or sink is what we're familiar. We talk sink all the time. 210.8, we talk sink, sink, sink. So in the 2023, this is just an example of one of the deltas. If you click on it, for those that are using the link, and you click on it, it'll say what is the change. You'll be able to see that what's evident here is the parenthesis basin was taken out. It's unnecessary. And we don't have to argue about what the heck a basin is. Sink. Just good enough. Sink. Okay? So there you go. So that's kind of, neat feature for Link. Allows you to do all that. Another thing that I want to talk about is keeping what's called the common structure of the code. Now, I'll give you an example of what we're talking about. So there are certain areas in the code where you'll get to where it's in the 2020 edition of the NEC, it started putting the term, like, for example, conduits. Let's talk about that one. So if you go look at conduits in the code, if you look in the definitions, you'll look and you'll see that if I look through the definitions and I'm looking for the term conduit, and you're flipping through it and you're going, okay, I don't really see conduit. So all of the conduits now, which we had definitions of those in the .2 of the specific conduits, like rigid 344, they've all been moved now. and they're following the same logical structure, means they're going to tell you first what the system is, what it is. We're talking conduit. And then it's going to have comma, and it's going to tell you the different types of conduit, whether it's rigid metal or whatever, that type of thing. It does the same thing for cable. They started doing that back in the 2020. I would say, ultra specific, big, impactful change, except where it just keeps with the flow, right? So when it comes to the conduit, for example, now it's going to have all of them listed there, and rather than the .2 of their specific article, and it's going to say conduit, comma, and then it's going to be whether it's intermediate, whether it's liquid tight flexible metal conduit, it's going to be whatever. So it's going to have all the conduits there. But what I like is it also remembers that most people don't search. And this link system has a searchability feature, okay, that is far better than any PDF feature. The only drawback that I can have to this system is they don't have an index that you can go to. So for educators, when we teach you how to use the index, we almost have to use the code book because we have an index. Here it's a search feature, so they really don't have the index. If I only had one recommendation to NFPA, was go on and add an index to it so that you can even use the electronic version online or teaching people in order to how to go to the index and things like that. And that would be my only recommendation that they included. It wouldn't take anything to just include all of that in there, because they're saying, well, why do you need that? Because you got the search feature. But I don't teach people to use a search feature as an educator. And again, where it's all about teaching people the code. And so that's why nothing's going to take the place of us having to get a hard copy code, because we need the index. We need to teach people how to maneuver. Now, in the field, if you have Link installed on your phone, on your tablet, laptop, then that's unnecessary, because you can just use a search feature, and they have a neat little situational feature called Direct. And that is a neat feature that I've talked about in my coffee hour when I introduced Link to everybody. So go watch that. That's available on our YouTube channel, showing you all the kind of little features and all. But again, if I had to recommend a change, I'd say go on and give us the index. It just helps us educators. Anyway, so conduit, comma, and then it gives you the type. Now, one of the things that I do like, again, is it's going to give parentheses. It's going to give you the verbiage in the way that we normally would say that type of wiring method, right? We wouldn't say conduit, and we wouldn't then go rigid, okay? Rigid metal. No, we would say rigid metal conduit, right? So in the code for searchability, it has conduit, comma, rigid metal, and then it's going to keep the acronym RMC. And that doesn't do well for search, but they did put in parentheses after all of it, rigid metal conduit. That's the way that we normally would say it. So they've added that, and they've been consistent with that. They did that with bonding jumpers, main bonding jumpers, which before was bonding jumper, comma, main. Now they have main bonding jumper in the parentheses in order to help searchability of the NEC, especially using the link search feature. It's going to make it much easier to search that way. So that is a consistent change throughout the NEC for you to be aware of. So acronyms are still there, except for things like bonding jumpers and main bonding jumpers and system bonding jumpers. They got rid of the acronyms for that. I guess it was people don't know how to grow up, and they're in lessons and classes, and an instructor says you know what I'm saying, right? Yeah, I think you get what I'm saying, right? Anyway, we know what we call them, but at the end of the day, there's examples where the acronyms aren't going to be there, right? And then of course there's situations where you're still going to have your acronyms. We have some new definitions that are appearing in the code, like, for example, counter, right? You didn't have that definition before in the code because we do make reference to counter, but I don't believe that was in the code anywhere. So what is a counter? Well, it's a fixed or stationary surface typically intended for food preparation and serving, personal levitation. I guess that's in your I guess that's in your bathroom, or laundering or similar services. I guess so it's a laundry counter in your laundry room, or similar services that present a routine risk of spillage or large quantities of liquids upon outlets mounted directly on or in the surface. Okay. And then, of course, it gives some informational notes that talks about GFCI protection, and then it's talking about different workspaces and receptacles and 406 and whatnot in countertops and whatnot. So again, informational notes, y'all all know this. Informational notes are not enforceable, but I love them. I don't want to turn the NEC into an installation manual. Again, Article 90 says that's not what this is all about. But at the end of the day, I do like keeping things as simple as possible and adding additional direction where necessary to help people that read it, especially in some of the topics that can be confusing for people. Informational notes can go a long way. Again, as long as the inspector doesn't get the wild idea, right, that these are enforceable, then I'm okay. Then I'm perfectly fine with it. Again, a lot of definitions are moved, like critical branch. It's specific to 517 is now here. It's so important because, again, we have all these conversations about healthcare facilities and the critical versus the equipment branch and the life safety branch. And, of course, making a common location for critical branch is just going to make it so much easier for people to understand what the topic is and what it's all about. Same thing, dental office, right? How many people were confused with the references in 517, especially when we're dealing with things like 517.13 A and B for the redundancy, and they're like, God, I know it makes reference to a dental office, and we all should know what a dental office is, but when applying certain rules to certain spaces within a dental office, it's like, well, I guess I'm going to need the definition of a dental office. Now, this is not new to 2023. This was there, right? This was there in the 2020 NEC. In fact, it was a new definition in the 2020. But I want to use this one as an example. So it got moved over into 100 like it rightfully should be. In the previous definition, I'm just using certain ones here to illustrate this. A dental office, it said a building or part thereof in which the following occur. Now, it says that same thing in 2023, right? It says the building or part thereof in which the following occur. And it's all the same information here, right? But it's not in a numbered order. It's just right here under a definition. And to be honest with you, I think it's just I don't know why. It just seems much easier to apply it. Rather than having to remember it's in a .2, I'm just like, dude, definition. Go to 100. I know some of you are going to say, whatever, Paul. And I get you. I got my haters. There's always that one guy. I know who you are. Just go ahead and hit the thumbs down now if that's who you are. If you like what we put out, make sure you give us a like and share. And again, also remember you can listen to all of these podcasts over on our YouTube channel as well. Go over there, like and share and subscribe at youtube.com/master the NEC. Okay. Very helpful to us. And it's your way of showing you appreciate our content. So anyway, it's a little cleaner, but I like how they're doing it and how they're referencing it. Okay. At any rate, there's a bunch of different ones here, so I don't want to belabor it out. But again, so if you're just now going to start dipping your toe into the 2023, I thought this would be a great episode to discuss it and let you know some of the things so that when you're looking at it, you're like, well, why does it do this? Why is this all grayed out? Why are they having, for example, duty cycle? They're doing duty short time, which is what the NEC has. But then after it says short time duty, because that's how we usually say it, right? That's how we usually make reference to it. So by doing that, we make it very easy to search for it because we would never search for duty, short time. We would search for short time duty, right? And so that just makes searchability so much easier. It really does. And so again, seems like a not non-significant change, but I think it is. I think it is a significant change. So anyway, get familiar with it. Now you have Article 100. Everything's there. Everything that was in the dot twos of specific articles have now been moved. So don't think that something disappears, it's gone. Remember that if it's in a specific article is after the definition in parentheses, that means that definition is only germane to that specific article. Okay. If it doesn't have that, then it's germane to the entire NEC, right? Remember that now there is no multiple parts to 100 when it comes to the definitions, right? It's just all right there in your face. So hopefully that helped you out. There's a lot of neat stuff in there, even in definitions. Encourage you to look at it and take it all in. As always, if you have any question on anything that you read, anything that doesn't make sense to you, what can you do? What can you do? Well, you can go to paulabernathy.com and you can submit a question, and I will answer your question the best I can via email or if selected on a upcoming Let's Ask Paul podcast. Have you listened to that podcast? If you haven't listened to it, go over to paulabernathy.com. You can actually click down and listen right there from your phone. Of course, you could still search for the Let's Ask Paul podcast on all of your popular search platforms. But again, thanks everybody for joining me. Hopefully you got something out of today's lesson and kind of giving you a better understanding of how Article 100 is going to be structured in the 2023. And of course, stay tuned for videos where we're going to be examining all aspects of the changes to the National Electrical Code. Till next time, my name is Paul Abernathy, your host, and be safe out there.